Thank you very much. And even so, I did held a position in corporate strategy. I restrained from using PowerPoint slides because I think you've probably seen enough of them the last couple of days, weeks, whatever. I want to give you a couple of examples what we're doing at Siemens in the mobility area, which in our case really means trains and also road infrastructure. Really concrete examples how this helps to drive things forward. And we use a lot of IoT technology in that. For us, it's important that IoT really influences people. It has to influence life because in the end, when we talk about mobility, trains, metros, light rail, whatever, it means that this is one of the lifebloods of any urban center of every city. Just imagine a city like Brussels if the metro will be on strike. Even worse, look at London. If you have the tube on strike, I think the city more or less breaks down. If you look at many of the urban centers, it's exactly this lifeblood of the city. So if you make sure that transportation works properly, people can really commute to where they need to go, and equally important, freight has to arrive. Otherwise, shops would run empty very, very soon and would have a tremendous impact on our life. So this is really something that we're focusing a lot on. In the end, when we look at our customers, they buy trains from us or rail infrastructure. They have spent enormous amounts of money on their assets. And these assets last very long. So an average lifetime of a train is somewhere between 30, and if you go more to the east of Europe, you go to the 40, 50 years time span. So this means they have to live with that technology for a long time. Our task is to make sure that they can get more value from these assets. I like to coin this a little bit like asset performance management. So get more performance from their asset. Very simple to what we just heard from Volvo. How can we improve the value of the investment already made? And this is something that I think there's a tremendous upside in there. When we look at availability of an asset, so how much time is a train available for moving as planned in the train schedule? Well, then you see tremendous differences across Europe. When you look at some published numbers from Deutsche Bahn, that's closer to like between 75, 80, 85% of the scheduled time. When you look at other countries, we get much closer to 99.99%. And I hate to quote the example from Russia, which is the high-speed train between St. Petersburg and Moscow, which actually has been available with 99.99% over the last 6 years. And the last 2 years, we had 9 delays of more than 5 minutes due to technical reasons. If you compare that to an experience you have in an average European country, in Western Europe, it's usually a little bit worse than that. But why is it working? Because we've invested a lot there in IT, in sensors, and actually analyzing the data. But if you have more availability, it also means that your same fleet of vehicles can do a lot more work. Or in other words, you need much less vehicles, much less investment to provide the same schedule for your passengers. We just had a conversation with the CEO of a rail operator in Europe that basically was saying, well, I have from Siemens about 50 trains, I need 3 more, but I can't afford to buy new ones. Can you help me improve availability by 5 percentage points? And yes, it's possible. And you can simply do that by using the same assets, using the data, and using it properly. On average today, there's about 15% more vehicles in the fleets than you actually need to do your operations. And that can be reduced significantly by 10%, or you can cut it down to 5 percentage points roughly, to be able to balance all the unexpected things. So that's a massive saving you can do, straight up. If you improve the efficiency of your systems, throughput, how you make sure that you get enough passengers or enough freight through your networks. Looking especially Western Europe, it's almost impossible to build new train lines. You can do that in Asia, you can do that maybe in the US sometimes, but in Europe it's pretty impossible. So how do we make sure we get more through the same infrastructure already in place? We've done a couple of examples with our customers. We believe about 10% efficiency improvements possible. Some is down to 5%, but that's roughly, it's a huge number if you look at that in our markets. And of course, it's utilization of that. So let me give you a couple of concrete examples how we're doing that. Something was in the press a couple of months ago was the Velaro D, which is one of the high-speed trains we have in Germany. We're monitoring that now for Deutsche Bahn Fernverkehr. We look at gearboxes, bearings, axles, and basically we really predict the failure 2 to 3 weeks in advance of any given component. If I know that the bearing is going to break in about three weeks, that means the train is coming back for maintenance anyway twice. It has to be checked through, clean the toilet, all this stuff. So it's somewhere in a depot and you can actually access it. This gives you ample time to make sure you choose the time when you change a component and not the component choose the time when it wants to break. Just imagine a high-speed train somewhere on a route, and we had that example a couple of months ago as well, from a different operator, where the train had to be evacuated with 700 people. That is a mess. I mean, just imagine you have to get 700 people out of such a train, bring a new train in, get the old one out, you disturb the whole operation for the day. This is a real big problem. And you have a lot of very angry passengers, rightfully so, by the way. In our example now for Velarde in Germany, we've been so far able to really pick every single failure would have been happening, and there was no disruption on that side. I think that is already an example that these things work. But as was pointed out also from a speaker from Volvo, was that this is not by using IoT and data and storing it somewhere, but this is because using analytics to predict really with a very high accuracy what is going to happen in the near future. If you don't do that, it doesn't really help. So this is really the core of what we're doing. And I showed the example here of the high-speed train in Russia, also on the metro train or the regional trains that are running in Russia. They also have extremely high availabilities because we're taking the data from those vehicles. Or to take an example from the UK, the Thameslink trains, one of the big challenges is they have to be on time. So you don't want to have delays. One of the big delay causes factors is the door. If a door breaks, people have to leave through a separate door. That doesn't take long, it's maybe 5-10 seconds. But this means that after 6 stations, you have 1 minute delay. If you're driving at a route where you have time between trains might be 2 or 3 minutes only, it means after 12 stations, so one train simply dropped off your schedule. This actually has a tremendous impact. We have metros running in Bangkok where they run at a head time of less than a minute between 2 metros. If their door breaks, on the whole track, basically 2 or 3 trains just disappear from operations. This means that the stations are full, the people are not queuing in 4 rows, they're queuing in 12 or 16 rows or up the stairs. That seriously disturbs the operation and makes people very angry, rightfully so. So that's something we really focus a lot on. Now, of course, we have a challenge in the whole rail industry. It's so easy to say we just take data from the train. Oh, cool, great. The problem is these things are sometimes very old, so not a lot of sensors were built in. And at the same time, it's very hard to add new sensors because you have to get this whole thing through certification or homogenization. And that can take about 2 years, sometimes a year if you're in a good situation, but it's a big mess to add additional information. So what we have been focusing on a lot is analyzing data through very sophisticated means that is existing at this very moment. So for example, we've developed an algorithm to predict the failure of a point machine purely by the data that's existing in the interlocking. Normally you would go out there, put the sensor in, measure the current of the motor and get your prediction. Cool, you can do that. That costs you time, money, effort, and so on. We can do that without anything of that. And we're pretty cool. About 8 hours in advance, we can pick up over 80% of all the failures. And that's sufficient for 60, 70, 80% of the points that exist in the railway network. So that's something we really have been focusing a lot on these topics. So how do we actually achieve all that? There's 2 pillars we rest on. There's one thing is people. We have a lot of these what's called data scientists, so people who really take mathematics very serious, use machine learning, deep learning, all the buzzwords we know about, and apply them to our business. But it's not just mathematical people. They also have to understand what the gearbox looks like, what the bearing looks like, what's the interlocking doing, so they understand the domain. That's why my team is sitting in a train factory, because it simply forces us to immerse into this world. But we also need a technical platform. And why do we provide our own platform? We call it Railigent, because we need to make sure that we have a good platform that's highly performing, okay, but also a safe one. So IT security is an extremely important element because we are dealing with the data from our customers. It's a very important asset for them and has to be for us. And IT security, I think, is one of the mostly underutilized topics in this whole industry because there's so many ways to attack IT systems and very few people think about how we do that or how you protect the systems from that. Encryption, we do penetration tests, we do friendly hacking, we do all that stuff because rather I want to know that something is broken in my system and fix it very quickly than somebody else knows it and doesn't tell me. So this is really the big part for our side. These 2 pillars we have to balance. The challenge we're facing, and I think that's sort of at the end of that presentation is, one thing is we have so many different semantics of data. It's very hard to read and correlate data from different sources. And that's something where I hope that at least for example, shift to radar is going to help us a little bit to move forward on this, and hopefully also the EU overall can drive this forward more. The more data we can combine between infrastructure and vehicles, the better we can do predictions. If we look at the fleet from only one vendor, it's much worse than if we can look at the whole fleet from all the different vendors that are serving the same purpose. That's one thing. The second thing really is IT security laws. We see them now coming up everywhere, but they're very different in every country, and that is a problem sometimes. And last but not least, and we're happy that you're there from the Catapult side, research on IoT, machine learning and IoT. I was astonished that for many of the problems we had to develop own mathematics. My team has filed 18 publications just last year on new mathematical methods because IoT data is different than internet data. And there's surprisingly little research on that existing. So I hope that I could give you a bit of an impression what we're doing around this, and I hope that when you see the train is coming on time, it might be due to the work of my team. Unfortunately not in Brussels, but in some other parts of this world quite a lot. Thank you.